Culture, industry, exports, housing, and we believe that this year we are going to grow by 5%. The good thing is that we probably are growing faster than 5%. But that also means that we got to make sure that we don't overheat. So Pakistan today is not only growing, but we have also decided, Peter, that we are not going to leave the underprivileged by the wayside. I think the underprivileged have been waiting for the trickle-down effect for too long. And because our growth has been cyclical and it's not been sustainable over a period of time, so trickle-down has never reached the bottom, the rung of our society. So we are going after the bottom-up approach as well, like Joe Biden. If United States needs bottom-up, I mean, Pakistan certainly does as well. So that will help Pakistan grow, will have an inclusive and sustainable growth over a period of time. That is the way we are moving ahead.
Thank you. And could you talk a little bit more about what the government is doing to help the poorer part of the population?
वज़ीर ख़ज़ाना इस वक्त अमरीकी इदारा बराए अमन से गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं। यहाँ पर वक्त हुआ है एक ब्रेक का।
जैसे हर लम्हे में हैं खुशियां बसी, उसी तरह पीक।
But actually, they will never reach. But there are other institutions. We do it, for living. Microfinance banks, microfinance NGOs, and in Pakistan, we have some, great leaders like Shoaib Sultan, and those are the people who have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And the return, the recovery rates have been around 98 to 99%. So what I did was I asked the large banks to wholesale the funds to these NGOs, these microfinance banks, and told them to go and retail this. So what are they doing? This is what your question is. Number one, they're going to go to the small agriculturists, people with 12.5 acres of land. They'll give them, interest-free loans of, for every crop, 150,000 rupees. There are 2 crops. Then they'll give 200,000 for mechanization. They'll go to people in the urban areas, give them $500,000 rupees, up to $500,000 interest-free loan to do their business. They'll give them money for, for their houses. They'll give, health cards, insurance, and also technical training for one person. Now, this is going to be a complete package, for around 4 million households over the next few years. So I think that is pretty significant.
That would be remarkable. And I think the population, I'm sure there are Pakistanis that are watching this right now from their homes and will certainly appreciate that. Now, you're here in Washington, D.C. at a very important week. This is the annual meetings of the World Bank and IMF. And as you mentioned, sir, under the Imran Khan government, negotiations with the IMF have resumed. And I think the 6th tranche of support might be in the offing. Could you describe what your mission is here and what you hope to bring home from your visit with the IMF?
I think concluding, the 6th tranche through the IMF is the most important, part of my visit. I mean, I could have done the IMF, meetings, and World Bank meetings virtually. But I've just come over here because I think we have completed the technical level, discussions. And the final, of course, the closure is going to be now talking over with the seniors at the IMF, including the managing director. So I believe that I think progress we have made today is pretty encouraging. And as we say, inshallah, I see this happening now on this visit.
Inshallah. If I could also talk about a priority that the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, has announced, he talked about Pakistan being too long focused on strategic or security issues, geosecurity, and is trying to pivot Pakistan's role in the region and the world to one focusing on geoeconomics. Can you explain what's behind that? What is happening behind the scenes to transition Pakistan to a vibrant, connected economy? And what should we begin to see in terms of evidence of that process working?
I think we have to understand that Pakistan at a lot of time in the past has been looking through the prism of security. And I think what the Prime Minister is saying, that I think we have to look through the prism of the economic welfare of our people. And when you talk about, so this kind of change in focus means everything changes in terms of your foreign policy and your economic policies, in terms of your, internal security and whatever else, and your relationship with your neighbors. I think Imran Khan has visited more neighbors in the last 1.5 years than the others did for an entire 5 years. So I think this is what we are doing. But we have an issue, and our issue is India. And India clearly is a bigger country. It's part of this SAARC, kind of economic, bloc we have. And we probably are the chairs of SAARC, but they will not visit us. So I think that is one area which we have to solve, our relationship with India. Otherwise, I think, our relationship with all our neighbors is good and getting better.
Well, we looking at South Asia for so long have been frustrated to see that South Asia is probably the least economically integrated region of the world. And there is an irony. You have the world's fastest growing big economy in India, which this year should experience somewhere between 9.5 and 10% economic growth. And international investors are clamoring to get into that market. And yet, its trade and investment with other countries in the region is very limited. Are there opportunities, you think, that we could see in the next year or two of increased trade between Pakistan and India, for example?
I think there's a fundamental issue between India and Pakistan, and that issue is Kashmir. The fact is that we think it's a disputed territory, and obviously Security Council and several resolutions has said that. But somehow or the other, this government of India does not accept that, and they just I think they unilaterally they cancel all the privileges given to the Kashmiris. So we do not agree with that. The very fact is our trade is suffering, our economic, obviously cooperation with India is suffering. But I think the Imran Khan has offered, so many times to India, if they make, take one step, we will take 2 steps. My own sense is, through this forum, I'll once again request the government of India to just basically sit back and say that yes, I think we have to cooperate. I can tell you, I've been a city banker. I've got very, very good Indian friends. And when we used to sit together, I think we used to, always talk about that, there's just a border. Both sides of the border, people live the same way as they live in India or Pakistan. So my own sense is, I think at political level, I think we got to just really give some space to the economics and the welfare of the people of both the countries.
Again, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Could I ask you about the other side of Pakistan, on your other border? You have a situation in Afghanistan where U.S. forces, after fighting America's longest war, have finally withdrawn completely. You have the Taliban taking power, consolidating power. But at the same time, there's an emerging horrendous humanitarian and economic crisis. How will that affect Pakistan? That has to spill over the borders 360 degrees around Afghanistan. And as you mentioned before, Pakistan dealt with conflict and the fallout of conflict in Afghanistan before. How do you anticipate the impact on Pakistan today?
I think the situation on the ground is, I would say, pretty dangerous. The Talibans are in control, whether we like it or not. I think the whole world is saying the Taliban must have an inclusive government, a tolerant government. This is not only what the United States of America is saying, but this is what Pakistan is saying, and every neighbor is saying. So we are trying that. I think we are trying our bit. I think there has been a meeting in Doha between the US delegation and the Taliban now. I think the noises are the right kind of noises. But we must understand that Taliban's probably running out of cash. And by end of this year, if the world does not get together to support them on the humanitarian grounds at least, then there could be a complete chaos. And there could be a situation where maybe even the Taliban may not be able to control. So what can happen is it'll spill over into Pakistan. It'll spill over all over the world. They will escape, they'll go and they'll try to just, reach Europe, they'll reach whatever country they can, because if they're not getting, 2 meals, in their home country, they'll do whatever they have to. So my own request to the world would be that they see this, that this something has happened. They're making early noises of cooperating with the world. They're making early noises of being a responsible country. So I think this is when we should say yes. I think let's help them step by step, and a kind of encourage them as they improve their behavior, or demonstrate their behavior. So Pakistan believes that if the situation in Afghanistan deteriorates, we will directly get affected.
I think my former colleagues in the U.S. government, where I used to work, my colleagues that are still in the U.S. government are still holding out very sort of important criteria for that financial support to the Taliban government, that the Taliban meet certain requirements on assuring the United States and other countries that they won't foster terrorist groups anymore, that they won't allow terrorist attacks to spill across their borders, that they'll respect the human rights of all Afghan citizens, and particularly allow girls to go to school and be treated fairly like boys. These are important issues for Pakistan as well. So what's your advice to your own government and to others to balance those foreign policy needs and requirements that we have toward Afghanistan, but at the same time recognizing they need money to feed their population at this critical time?
Pakistan, like any other country, as I said, wants an inclusive government to start with, I think, which means they cannot just have Pashtuns. I mean, there should be Tajiks, Hazarites, Uzbeks. And not only that, they've already included them in the second rung of their government. We need to see those faces in the senior echelons of their government. And then, as they have promised now, that they will basically also respect the human rights of the women and all citizens. We want a demonstration of that, and also we want to see that all the pledges they have been making, that there will be no terrorism